1985, Villanova shocks the world by upsetting Georgetown.
1996, Princeton Tigers upsets UCLA Bruins.
In 1997, Coppin State upsets South Carolina.
2018, the first ever number 16 seed UMBC upsets number 1 University of Virginia.
Everyone loves a great underdog story, the huge upsets, David beating Goliath. But what happens when there are no upsets? When the only people you get to see and hear from are famous people, the superstars, the head coaches, the celebrities. Are their stories more important? Do they matter more? Everyone puts in the same work, the same time, the same sweat. So who hears their stories? From the walk-ons, the assistant coaches, the role players, the 10th man off the bench. Everyone has a story and everyone has a voice. And on this podcast, you will meet these people, you will hear their stories in their own voices.
This is Underrated.
Welcome to Underrated Season 2. I am your host, Ray Hutter, along with my co-host, who seems to always be getting younger every time I see him, Mr. David Capers. What's up? Welcome to Season 2.
I'm good. I'm excited for the next season, bro. Let's kick it off.
That's right. And we have a fantastic guest, and we'll get to him in a second, but a few housekeeping items. You know, we've gotten a lot of love in Season 1. So, again, please make sure you're going out there, you're subscribing, you're hitting the like button, you're sharing, you're getting out to as many people as possible. I got a shout out to some friends I met in Aruba this past week. So, Arnell and Flores, thank you for your hospitality, your farm, your garden, spectacular. So, appreciate that and look forward to seeing you hopefully in the coming months. And that we got another huge announcement, Dave.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Let me know.
So our first sponsor in Season 1 was Chile Shades, and you'll have the link to them again. And Freddie Q, that our guest we're going to have in a moment, we'll introduce him. We'll be shipping you a pair of these sunglasses as well, so you can rock them out there where you're living. But second and major announcement, our new sponsor in Season 2, you ready? Tommy Copper. All right. Tommy Copper, the original copper compression, health management, pain management, clothing attire. So we're excited to have them on board. There's going to be more details getting rolled out. But again, we all use their products. I know I use them, you know, sleeves, back brace, knee compression, pain management. They had the best thing. They had this like roll-on thing too that you could roll on in areas where your muscles ache, took it right away. So we're excited to have Tommy Copper. And now we're going to turn and switch gears and get ready for our guest. So let me introduce him, all right? So this man has done a lot of things. He's accomplished a lot of great things, and you're going to hear about it all tonight. But he's a Stepinac guy, as so as I am. So I'm representing the Stepinac shirt. We got Cardinal Spellman over here. So the CHSAA is being represented once again. And so this gentleman, he coached at Notre Dame. He played at Fordham University, and we'll talk a little bit about that. He coached at UNC, coached all over the place. Those are just some of the few, but his longest tenure was at the University of Kansas. Okay. And in 2022, they won a national championship. So let me introduce you to the one and only, a dear friend of mine, Coach Fred Quartlebaum. Freddie, what's up, man? It's good to see you.
Ray, Dave, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that long introduction. That just goes to show how long I've been coaching and all the places that I've stopped at. But what you all are doing, sharing this new energy, you know, to your audience, bringing people aboard and sharing these stories, I think is something that we all need. So, Ray, Dave, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, and before we kick it off, I got just one story about Fred. So I had the opportunity to play him one summer. We were playing hoops at Stepinac, and you know, I was like looking, you know, like I'm still like, you know, I had that like that ego, like I got to stop this guy, right? You know, older guy, got to represent my year 91, and I got right up on him. I was like, I'm gonna stop him. You know what I mean? He cleared me out with an to my eye, and I felt like Rocky Balboa getting punched by Clubber Lang. I was like, "Whoa." And I was just like, "This guy is so strong," and, oh, man, but all the good times of playing against you and representing the Stepinac crew together and a lot of Stepinac love. But Freddie, just give a few minutes, kick off with, a little background about you. I know I mentioned some things, but just give a little, couple minutes telling, like, what you've done, where you've been, and where you're going.
Sure. Well, just very quickly, again, you talked a little bit about some of the places that I've been, but I'll kind of go through the 9 places in particular chronologically. But started my career in coaching at the United States Naval Academy, which, with that being said, I didn't know at the time, but I had to join the Navy in order to take that position. Loved it so much. I stayed all 4 years. From there, I went to Towson State University in Maryland, and I went a little north, went up to Worcester, Massachusetts, up in Holy Cross, and came a little closer to the city, spent the year down at Fairfield University, and then made that jump from mid-major to high major. You mentioned Notre Dame, and had an opportunity to coach at Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And my first taste of the true Midwest, I was at Iowa State in Ames, Iowa, then came back to the big city, coached at St. John's, and then my last stint, which you mentioned, the last 12 years was at the University of Kansas. So great opportunity to meet so many people along my journey that I continue to stay in contact with, and you really get the true dose of that it really is more than just a game. It's about the relationships, friendships that you build throughout your journey that you're going to miss the most.
Yeah, and so talk a little bit also about your, playing career, because 'cause we're gonna get into recruiting and all of that stuff, but, you graduated Stepinac and you went to Fordham. What made you choose to go to Fordham?
I think a few things. I just fell in love with the campus, and I actually grew up in the Bronx, so it actually was not too far from where I grew up on Davidson Avenue. So I've always had a connection to Fordham University, but I just love their style of play, their grit. Tom Penders, who recruited me, was the head coach there. I only played for him for 1 year, but it just had a sense of home, and I just gravitated to the academics, believe it or not, I did, but it just was a win-win situation for me, Jesuit university, and just continue to instill the values or continue the values that I received at Stepinac.
Yeah.
What other schools were recruiting you?
I had, Canisius was another school that was recruiting me. Lot of the MAC schools have recruited, but I actually committed early. Just fell in love with the place, and the student athletes at the time there became lifelong friends, and just had a wonderful, great experience on and off the court in Rose Hill.
That's awesome. So I mean, we talk about this. I coached at Champlain College. Dave's been doing some coaching at Cardinal Spellman, and working out players and things like that. What made you want to just stay in the game, and after you graduated Fordham, say, "Hey, I want to get into coaching"? Because you've been at so many different places. You've always been successful. So what made you decide, like, "Hey, this is the thing I want to do for my career"?
I believe it's maybe something of an upbringing, and it probably started at Stepinac, in terms of, my career at Fordham, was truly built on the relationships and service, right? And I think I just gravitated to those two things. Wanted to, add value, mentor, and guide young people. And I just continued as a player. I've learned what it meant to be part of something that's bigger than you, and where leadership wasn't just about having the loudest voice all the time, but how do you make others better? So I've always gravitated to that type of mentality, and the lessons in teamwork and mentorship, from that time, continue to shape how I coach and how I led today, whether it be on the court or in life.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. As far as like, so after school, you didn't go play no professional ball or anything. You just went straight to coaching.
Great question, Dave. There wasn't a potential opportunity to go to Portugal. Tom Parada, who's a mutual friend of Ray and I, Stepinac grad as well as a Fordham grad. He was playing over in Portugal. So there was an opportunity, but I also think it was kind of unknown or uncertain. And again, I just fell in love with that aspect of working guys out. and just continue to stay with that level of teaching, coaching, and it just turned out to be a career and loved it.
It's funny because Dave played overseas, and a lot of guys that we've spoke to, whether it be Ricky or Cash from back in season one, they all have funny stories and some of them are horror stories of like playing overseas, and so but it's the love that we all have for this game,
Yes.
and to your point, Fred, being a part of something like even now we play pickup, twice a week and it's just that camaraderie, but also sharing of the stories and just always looking out for one another. And one of the things that, and we'll get to what you're doing today, but one of the things that we talked about with Cash was the clinic kids and what they're doing with like basically teaching basketball, but also bringing in the importance of mental health. And I think Cash mentioned it. He was saying that a lot of times when you're struggling in life or whatever, they always send you out to somebody. They'll send you to a therapist that's outside of sports. And what Cash is trying to do is like bring that all together as part of like a service to really focus on, the well-being of people and, just really, having not that basketball identifies you only, but what happens when the game is over, right? You can get into coaching, you could get into service, you could get into helping. I mean, I don't know if you want to elaborate any more on that, but
Yeah, I mean, it's just that what's life after basketball, right? Because everybody defines you as somebody who played basketball for the most part, right? And then they associate you with basketball. But what do you do after all of that? That praise and that glory stops. People stop giving you things, right? I mean, being a basketball player in your prime is great because everybody wants to cater towards you. They want to give you things and they want to help you along the way. But what happens when all that stops and how do you deal with that when it stops? Like, it's rough for a lot of guys. So.
yeah. So Fred, that's a good topic. How did you transition then from being a player to a successful coach, and especially going to all of the different places you did?
Yeah. I think, and, I would, no doubt about it, the best thing that happened for me in my coaching career was a start at the United States Naval Academy, because obviously you're at one of the leadership institutions of the world. And one of the things that really stood out being there is that they are midshipmen who just happen to play basketball. Right? And that really gravitated towards me like, you know, we're around these young men and young women that are really sacrificing their lives for us. So it was really important that they understood that they're there to be midshipmen and leaders, and basketball and everything else comes second. So with that being said, I think coaching over the 3 decades has given me an opportunity to serve others every day. And that's something I look forward to from my time at the United States Naval Academy, because, leadership is, as I love talking about, is about developing people, not just players. And I was blessed to mentor, young men, guide teams through, when you talk about it, through adversity, and just try to help build cultures where everyone buys into the collective good.
And how is that recruiting? Because I mean, we've had a couple college assistant coaches on here, and they talked about, and we'll get into that as well, because I'm sure that has an impact, obviously, with the NIL and the portal stuff. But how was it recruiting? Like, how did you recruit for the Naval Academy? Or it wasn't that; it was more people just went there, and then you kind of said, "Hey, we have a basketball team, come play."
Yeah, it's a different type of recruiting because you're recruiting from a different pool, right? And it's important that you try to identify that pool. Obviously, young men that may have an interest in serving the country, young men that may come from a military background, young men that have good grades, young men that are high in character, integrity, that happen to play basketball. It cannot be the other way around. So a lot of potential recruits either eliminate themselves from just not fitting in those categories, and you're recruiting throughout the country. So it's not like, okay, Fordham, you're going to recruit, a certain pocket, right? For us, we had to be strategic. Okay, where are the military bases? Number one, San Diego, down Virginia. So you have to make sure you kind of identify the certain pockets, because you don't want to waste your time, and you're really recruiting everyone until they start to eliminate. So you can start recruiting 400 people or players, and then it dwindles down to about 10.
Right,
Where
right.
we're at the higher level, you're already locked in on 10, and you're probably going to take 2 out of the 10. Totally different from the Naval League. But again, that just instilled the work ethic of, turning over every stone, making more calls than, you need to find out more and more about, potential recruits to see if they fit your your university or your college.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I'm kind of stuck on this Navy, right? So I know you coached there. Did they have did you have any type of military background in your house? And the reason why I'm asking that is because you said that you had to join the Navy, right? And
Yes.
I wanted to actually play basketball or coach it, and I know I had to join a certain group like a Navy. I don't that would kind of sway me towards maybe not wanting to serve.
Sure.
But unless if I had maybe a background in that, my parents or somebody, then it would be more acceptable. But that just kind of seems kind of like far fetched. Like, okay, now you got to join the Navy. So, like, how was that experience for you?
It was an eye opener, where I kind of talked to you about the call, got the phone call from a former coach who coached me at Fordham, but he also coached at Navy. And there was an opportunity where there was a coaching change. And he is recruiting me about Annapolis, about David Robinson, you name it, on and on and on and on and on and on. And, I'm excited, like, wow, I'm going to coach here, David Robinson. And then, that small pause, you usually hear. And then, there's like a but Q, there's another component. You have to join the Navy. And that was a defining moment for me because it just okay, how passionate are you about coaching at the collegiate level? That was a real true test for me. And then we talk a little bit more about what it was because I had my degree. You go in as an officer. You the thing that I do have military background. My grandfather, served in the army. My uncle served in the Air Force. But any besides that, not a whole lot. I wished one thing. I say it now that we did not go to OCS, which is Officer Candidate School, or boot camp. You kinda had to learn on the fly or learn from other military officers, just kinda navigate your way, but it turned out just to be a great experience, uh, in leading midshipmen, and I had military, responsibilities. I was a, PTO, I was a, training officer, I was a physical training officer during my 4 years in Annapolis.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, coaching at Champlain College, I would have taken any job Division I too. So I would have been like, yeah, 'cause I used to be Q on the road recruiting when he was at other schools, and I would do anything, ensure to try to break in. So I get it, like, because that's your break, right? That
Yes.
gets you in, and once you're in, it's easier to stay in than actually get in through that door. So I
Great point.
understand why you did that. Yeah,
So that was
Great point, Ray.
yeah,
Everyone has their different journeys, man, and whatever that passion may be. Mine happened just to be, you had to join the Navy.
yeah.
that's cool. That's cool. So talk a little bit about, and we'll focus some time on Kansas since, I think that was your longest tenure, but just, you coached at the Navy, just take us through a little bit, like in detail, like what did you get out of every experience? Cause I'm sure different campuses, different coaching styles, different offenses and defenses, X's and O's, et cetera.
Yeah.
And just, bouncing around with your family for, almost kind of like a military brat, if you would, right?
Yes.
Like you've coached, you moved a lot. So just take us through, like, what did you take out of all of those, those coaching opportunities before you got to Kansas?
Yeah, again, we talked a little bit about the Naval Academy, and my next stop was Towson State, which is really about 30 to 40 minutes from Annapolis. That was a opportunity to really learn more about recruiting because again, I talked about a certain pool of students that you were targeting at the Naval Academy that you probably wouldn't recruit at Towson. So that was really the first opportunity that I had to now go out and recruit a different caliber player. So that worked out great because I worked with a guy by the name of Jim Meal, who was well known in the Baltimore area, can walk in any hood, anywhere, and his name would just be like, "Hey, we know Jim, we know Jim." So I understood the importance of relationships when you talk about recruiting. It wasn't just, hey, I got to recruit the player. No, you have to recruit and build relationships outside of just that particular individual. So, what's their family dynamics, girlfriend, best friend, the principal, the nurse, so that really was a really good eye opener for me, that it wasn't just about you recruiting a player. You have to recruit everybody who's definitely associated with that particular recruit. Holy Cross, very similar to Fordham in a sense. We were both in the same conference. We were in the MAC at the time, worked for a guy by the name of Bill Rayner. And I really enjoyed the relationships that Bill had with his players. It was more than just on the court. I saw how he brought guys into the office and talked about how their day is going, and just always continue to want to know a little bit more about them outside of basketball. And Bill was an Ivy League grad, so it was nice to see that perspective. And then I worked with Timmy O'Toole down at Fairfield, and Timmy, I see your smile already, Ray. He hadn't changed. Timmy was great for me because Timmy really started to talk, about I don't want to say the philosophy or the psychology of coaching, but really started to introduce me to, like Carl Jung and just Tony Robbins, just to start thinking about Og Mandino, all these great minds and how it talked about, you know, being the best version of yourself. So that was a great, great experience for me and learning about, again, he was at Duke. So Tim was kind of brought that winning type of mentality, a winning culture to Fairfield to see what that looked like. And then went to Notre Dame with Matt Doherty, who I arguably very similar to Bill Self, there are relentless recruiters. I saw this 6 a.m. in the morning, he's there and he won't leave till 1 o'clock the next morning. And he's constantly on the phone. Because prior to coaching, Matt was on Wall Street, right? So, you know, thing that Matt brought, he just brought, hey, next call. Okay. Next call, next call, next call. We got a call. We got a call. We got a call. So that also now just brought, okay, we got to get after because now all of a sudden you're not recruiting against mid majors now. You are recruiting against other high level schools. So you have to try to beat out Stanford. You have to try to beat out a Duke for players. So that again was a big jump, a big educational piece for me. Now, recruiting level is different from those other levels. And very similar to North Carolina. That was a great experience for me because I saw how strong the former players are, the connection that they had that goes way beyond basketball. I mean, these guys would come back 20, 30 deep just to kind of hang out, meet us, meet the current players because they just had a deep, deep connection and passion. But it's not a coincidence that Michael or Perkins or one of those guys would just come in the in the office and just hang out. It was just a part of the culture that Coach Smith, had during his time in Carolina. And went to Iowa State, worked for one of the best. I mean, I'm talking about one of the best individuals ever. Wayne Morgan was just there with him for a year. And, Wayne was arguably one of the best recruiting assistants at Syracuse. You're talking about greats, Cyclee Coleman, all those guys, Sherm Douglas, all those guys played there when Wayne was there. And then went Norm Roberts. And Norm, probably a clone. We're probably clones, man. I mean, in terms of just our work ethic, our integrity, our character, family. We just kind of align so much in so many different ways. We're both New Yorkers. So I learned a lot under Norm in terms of, just how to do it the right way, how to do things the right way. He was with Bill Self at Kansas for an extended period of time. So having that opportunity to work for Norm and then having an opportunity to work with Norm with Coach Self in my last place there. And lastly, I tell everybody this, that I got my undergraduate, my graduate, my master's, my PhD, my doctorate in relationship building, culture building, and team building under Bill Self. I'm telling you, if you want to have a master class on those three things, he's definitely your guy. And to the second part of your question, Ray and Dave, I've been married to Christy for 28 years, and she's been with me every step of the way. And I tell you, it definitely takes a certain um, person to go along this journey because you mentioned, the sacrifices, the commitments, the long nights, the early mornings, all those are a part of it. And you do miss a lot, that kind of goes with it. And, I've missed a lot of family events and commitments because of basketball. So for her to be so supportive of my career and she has her own career as well. So we just been a total team. We have two great young men now, Trey, who's our 25, and Mason, who's 23, still playing his last year of college basketball. So we just been blessed, fortunate just to kind of have our own team Q throughout this journey.
Yeah, what made Kansas so special that you stayed there for so long? Because I know a lot of times, assistant coaches will bounce around until they get their own head coaching opportunity. But was it just like Bill Self and how he ran the program and the school itself? What made you want to stay there for so long?
I think there are a lot of factors you touched on one, obviously coach, Hall of Fame coach. You wanted to align yourself with someone who's the best, what he does. And I was just fortunate to take notes and really kind of dive in and to pour in why, as I call Coach Self, why he's a Hall of Famer, why he's a separator. And that was really a curiosity for me, Ray and Dave. Why is Kansas good? Why is Kansas always in conversation to go to the Final Four or potentially win a national championship? Why is Kansas so freaking good year in and year out? I wanted to know. I was curious about that. And as I said, Bill Self understands that talent alone is not going to be the security blanket to your success, to the milestones that we have accomplished. Less while I was there. So I had to see it firsthand what we do every single day to be difference makers, to be separators. That's why I stayed.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you probably answered my question, but I was going to ask you out of all the places because the coach has some phenomenal programs. Who would you consider a mentor, or like who was that person that you kind of like? I guess it's Bill Self you hitch your wagon to, so you can kind of understand like how this game works. Like, who was that guy who was in your ear and letting you know, okay, this is what's really going on behind the scenes, and this is how you got to conduct yourself, or just being that coaching state of mind.
Yeah, Dave, it's a good question. I still talk to, Bill Rayner, who I worked with back in 1998, I believe it was. Tim O'Toole, 1999. I still lean on these guys. When you're still in that growth journey, and that's one thing I talk about, staying curious. You can always learn from everybody's story. So I still reach out to these guys all the time. Obviously Bill, he and I text early this morning. He's probably, but I still reach out to those coaches along my journey because I've always appreciated, first of all, giving me that opportunity to work alongside with them and then giving me an opportunity to become the best version of myself. So I can't pinpoint on one coach. I just say there's so many of them that just have been so impactful throughout my career.
So, give us a day. We asked Ricky this, and it was interesting because the way Coach Pitino does things. Ricky coached with Coach Pitino at Iona, and then when Coach Pitino went to St. John's, he brought Ricky along with him. And we asked Ricky the same question, but take us through like a day in the life of an assistant coach because I always used to joke around, right? Like the head coaches get the glory, but the assistant coaches are doing all the prep work and getting everything ready to go for the games, for the practices. So just take us through like what a day in the life was. Just it doesn't have to be at any school, but just kind of, a day in the life of what an assistant coach does.
Hmm. I'll just share. I'll just share mine. Mine. Because I know what I do. I don't know what
Yeah,
everybody else does. But I start out. I get up early in the morning. I try to get up before my wife gets up, so I can just have some mental clarity, some space there to plan my day. So I'll get up. I'll read. I'll journal. I may listen to a podcast, and then I go train every morning. So that kind of kickstarts my day to get that energy. Because I always say that if you don't have the energy within you, how are you going to pour energy into others? So I want to make sure that I'm fueling the culture. I talk about that a lot. I want to fuel the culture. So when I step in that office, I'm ready to go. And then it could be from, returning phone calls or jumping in calls to recruits, high school coaches, AAU coaches, family members just to check in, or even that particular, student athlete you're recruiting. So you do a lot of that in the morning. You could have practice in the morning. We would sometimes go in the morning, or we would go, sometime in the afternoon. But then some guys may want to come in and get some extra work in. So you work some skill development before you even touch the court as a team. And then after practice could be, okay, let's watch film. We'll go watch some film individually, or maybe if you have the big guys, you bring the big guys in and you just kind of want to watch practice and see things we did well, things we need to improve on. One of the things that we did at KU, and I've been fortunate through coach, is that I became our culture facilitator. So I would do a lot of culture classroom sessions with our guys just to make sure that we keep our expectations and our values uh, at an elite level, and we always talk about regardless of the circumstances. And that was one thing that I truly gravitated towards because, again, Dave, you talked about it earlier, it's bigger than basketball. So, yes, we're talking about the expectations that we need to do every single day in our program, but these are also going to transfer to you being a father or a husband, or you going into the NBA, you going to the business world, wherever it may be, these are transferable core values. So I was big into that space, man. So yeah, you would go, it could be after practice, you want to get with the guys, maybe not watch film, then it may be, hey, where you guys going to eat at? Hey man, I'm gonna go join you. So again, getting around the guys, learning about their stories as much as possible, I think is so important. So you want to make sure you pour into yourself selfishly, right? But then you want to be able to opportunity to now pour into others as your day goes.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good thing because, we talk about this all the time. Is especially probably since COVID, and then the 5 years since the NCAA has changed a lot. So how did you keep like we talked about clinic kids and like the mental health. How did you keep everybody like mentally fresh, mentally sharp, going to class still, battling through like the pandemic and all of that stuff where they canceled the NCAA tournament that year in 2020. Like, what were you doing to help those kids get through those situations?
Well, we have a sports psychologist who is a part of our program. So we made sure that he was available, for our guys, even for our coaches, right? I mean, for all of us, because we were all going through times of uncertainty in our country. We're going through pandemic. We were going through stay-at-home orders. We were going through a lot. Some student athletes, coaches like myself, we had COVID. So we all had to deal. Everyone was dealing with something. So we wanted to make sure that we had the resources that were there for everyone to help them, navigate during these uncharted waters and what have you. So I think that was the most important thing. We put the basketball, on the side. We want to make sure that our guys are right mentally moving forward.
I know this is kind of off the topic, but what was the most you recruited? So what was the best player that you've ever recruited, or the most notable player? I would say that kind of stuck out, or maybe not so that. Let me rephrase this. who did you recruit that you didn't think that was a pro became a pro? Put it that way.
Mm. I would probably say David Noel at North Carolina. David was an interesting story because we were I happened was going to act, and this happens a lot. You watch somebody else, but somebody else catches your eye, right? And all of a sudden, it was like, who is this 6'5" running, jumping, athletic, putting his chest on the rim? Who's that dude? Uh, and his name was David Noel, and he was actually going to Carolina for football. He was I mean, he was a stud. And but he says, Coach, I really want to play basketball. I really want to play basketball. So, it was doing that 5'8" rule. I think you probably, maybe you were a part of that 5'8" rule where you can only bring a certain amount of guys in 2 years, I think 8 in 2 years. But we were at our limit. We were at our limit. So again, it goes back to what we talked about initially, developing relationships outside of just a student athlete with his mom, his sisters, uncle, everybody involved. That David Noel actually paid his own way his freshman year. Yep. Paid his own way his freshman year. And we guaranteed him that he would be on scholarship the following year.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean that's a hell of a job recruiting.
He paid his own way. And we talk all the time. And we're talking about 25 years ago. And his parents, his mom, she still and his sister still thanks you for the day for having faith in her and there's in her son. And David went on to win a national championship at Carolina, and he went on to play a few years in the NBA, played with the Milwaukee Bucks. But that was a story that, there's so many of them, Dave, but that one was the one that you just didn't know which direction, but you just saw something in him. You saw obviously outside of this, the athleticism. And I wasn't there to watch him. I was there to watch somebody else.
That usually happens though, and because you go to an AAU like tournament, and you have your paperwork back in the day. Now everything's probably done on like the iPhone and tablets and stuff. But Tom Kinchowski or Eddie Butler would give you like a list of people, and he would say, all right, Ray, this is what you want to look at for Champlain Junior College, blah blah blah. So they would tell you like who, and then you'd go there and you'd be like, who's that guy? Like I want to know that
Yes.
guy.
That's exactly how it turned. That's exactly how it turned
Yeah,
out.
that's cool. So, because I'm Stepinac proud, I want to bring this back to you. 2022, you're, Kansas, and you win the national championship, but you're in the Final Four with a couple other Stepinac guys. So you have R.J. Davis, all right, and was it R.J. Griffin from who played at Duke? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was AJ.
yeah. I'm sorry, I should know that. That's embarrassing. Sorry about that, Stepinac crew.
Yep.
But what was that? Because I know here in New York, there was a lot of media coverage about like the Stepinac representation at that Final Four. But what was it like for you? Because I know there's a picture, I think, of you and RJ. You have your arm around him and you're talking to him after the game or whatever. But what was it like to have that moment where your high school where you went to, and now all the Pat Massaroni's turned that program into a powerhouse over the last 10 years or so. So, like, what was that moment like to just like have that moment with, a couple stepping at guys?
I was so proud, because we all walked the halls of Stepinac. We all took what was it, the 60?
Yeah, yeah.
I think it was the 60.
60 bucks.
Where if you missed your bus, you didn't have a ride, so you were jumping on that 60 bus to Mamaroneck Avenue. So those again, we all connected. It was like a brotherhood that connected us, and just so proud to get to that moment because it's so hard to it's easier to win 30 games than to win 6 in a row. It's so hard, and everything has to go right. I mean, everything has to be at an elite level. It has to be because one thing can it's one game single game elimination. So it's one thing go wrong. I shared this with someone else. I said, have a pen in your hand, and it has to every time you flip it, it has to come heads every single time. So there's no guarantee, right? There's no guarantee. But to see To see our Stepinac family on that national stage was just amazing. I knew we were going to face someone was going to win. So we just didn't know who it was, but RJ played, as you know, was phenomenal. I mean, he was terrific that first half of that game. I mean, we're down 15 points, and he was just the quarterback. And we're like, oh, if we don't cut the head of the snake, we're going to be in trouble. But to your point, when I went over to console him, after the game because he played his heart out, and I just wanted to let him know how proud I was of him. And I wanted him, I know it was a difficult moment at the time, but I said, "This moment will pass, and you'll be back." And just told him that, the Stepinac family back home were just so proud of your performance. But, to your point, that moment reminds me of why I got into coaching, right? It goes beyond the competition. It goes back to the leadership. It goes back to the mentorship. And that time was more about
Right.
respect and gratitude. And like I said earlier, just reinforcing that brotherhood that we both have step in that ties.
Yeah, that's cool.
And, hopefully one of these days, Cardinal Spellman can have some guys up in there. Who can,
Yeah,
bec-
yeah.
Yes, but like to Fred's point, like I mean, you bang those three foul shots, like Kentucky, Tubby Smith, like you're close to knocking them out, like like I mean,
Right.
and all of a sudden, like like that dynasty or whatever, Kentucky's like, oh my gosh, you lost to St. Bonaventures. I mean, you guys had some battles like in the tournament where there were some times where you got eliminated early, and I'm sure as a coach you've had the highest of highs winning the championship, which we'll talk about that in a second, but you've also had some lows where you go into the tournament ranked pretty high and then like you lose in like an early round. So describe what it was like to win the championship and then how that, how do you overcome those seasons where you get knocked out early?
Yeah, yeah. Well, to win it, the year we won it, it started the summer before, right? It started the summer before. I think we knew that the core guys coming back, that we would be again, I want to say in conversation, but year in, year out. I don't know what we were preseason ranked. I don't think we may have not been one that year, but this was a group that actually embraced challenges, welcomed adversity, invited obstacles. I'm telling you, they were this was a different group. And just throughout the course of the season, and again, like you said earlier, there are highs and lows, there are ebbs and flows, there's wins and losses, there's success and setbacks, there's sunshine and storms. I mean, it's just a part of your journey. It's just how you are going to respond to the moments of challenge. That's the biggest part, right? And that group, I can tell you about different scenarios during the course of the year that they've always responded to challenges. You talked about Kentucky earlier, Dave. You know, we played Kentucky at home, and it was the first game day since COVID. It was the first game day since COVID. So Kentucky came into our place, Allen Fieldhouse, where we very seldom we lose. And they came in there and they put it on us. I believe we lost by 16 or 17, and they looked like they were going to cut the nets down in New Orleans. And we were looking like we're going to just try to fight, scratch, and claw our way to the NIT. But how these guys responded to that moment, I think we go off and win maybe 7 or 8 straight. So you just got to have a certain group that buys into what wins, and that was a team that all the way through, all the way up to being down 15 in a national championship game, which is still today the biggest comeback in NCAA history. No one's ever done that. So the odds of us doing that was very, very slim to none. And then you get to the other side, to your point. Then you get, you get knocked out in this for us. I think I've ever got out right in the first round, but you get knocked out in the second round, which is always gut wrenching. It just basically you don't have another game left, so it's really a tough time, difficult time, but it's a part of the journey. I mean, that's what you signed up for. Again, there's just no guarantees. But the thing about us and the thing about Bill, okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to do to get better tomorrow? What do we need to do to get better tomorrow? That was our whole mentality. What do we need to do to get better tomorrow? So that was the way for us to move on to the next play, right? To move on. And I always say this that teams that can, and people, the teams that, can expect, prepare, and even plan for those moments of challenge, those are the teams and the people that can bounce back a lot quicker, and we've been able to do that. I think we still have I think we have the consecutive, I believe it's 35 straight NCAA tournament appearances, 35 straight. So, yeah, so that's 1990,
Wow.
1990 to this. I mean, just amazing. Just incredible. 14 straight conference championships at the highest level. That's never gonna be done again. No one's gonna win 14 straight ever. And I've been a part of what, 7? I think I was there for 7 of them. So, again, it's just what you sign up for, guys, but it's just how you respond to those moments of loss, those moments of adversity.
Cool. I mean, I can definitely see that being a challenge today because, with the NIL and the portals and stuff, just from one coach, I can see. Would you say that you think that the playing the playing field for all of these bigger schools is more level now, just because now you got like a Fordham that can be the top tier or a high major school because of all the transfers in.
Yeah, I definitely think there's more parity at the higher levels now. There's no question about. I don't think you'll see. I could be wrong on this. Could be wrong. I don't think you'll see as many upsets that you have in the past. I don't think there'll be as many because now the high majors are actually getting the mid majors top players now, right? So I just don't see it, but not that it can't be done. But that was something that was just so unique about the tournament too, that you could, end up losing to a 15 or 14 seed or maybe a 16 seed. I just don't think just the way what you said, which with the parity on the higher levels now, you just may not see it as much.
So as to build on what Dave just asked you, what about like what is it with the NIL and the transfer portal and all of that stuff that I mean, do you see that as a positive thing for the game, or do you think it's destroying the game? Because I know a lot of coaches also, I mean, they may not come out and say it, but you speculate that like people are like, you know what, especially like old school guys, like I'm done with this, I can't deal with this anymore. I mean, what is your take on that?
A lot of great ties.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think again, it's today's culture, it's the landscape of college athletics, and either you adjust or you adapt or you get left behind. That's first and foremost. But the NIL space now, I think allows student athletes to be compensated, but I also think it allows student athletes to look beyond the borders of their sport, right? I think there's different components now that goes with it from the, financial literacy standpoint. I think is so important now. So taking business classes and taking those type of classes that deal with finance, I think is becoming more important than ever because you're making money now. So you want to kind of understand about how it works for you and how to invest it, how to save it, how to budget it. Because a lot of these guys, mm, initially they never had a checkbook, right? So they never budget money. All of a sudden they had $20 in their pocket. Now they got a check for $20,000 at 18 years old. So this is a whole new educational piece for these student athletes across the board. So there are more and more resources that are out there, and I think schools have done a really good job of now bringing these type of resources to support and to help their student athletes on side of the compensation. That's just another component of it. But I also think that, making sure that we putting our student athletes in positions where they have leverage, they have a little bit more knowledge, they can walk in different, meeting spaces, board meetings, things like that to kind of get an understanding what that looks like now.
Yeah, because Marcus talked about that a little bit. Like, so Marcus Whitaker played at FDU, but he was talking about,
Yes.
to your point, like, it's an interesting take because we've talked to some coaches and they're like, yeah, it's ruining the game. It's ruining the recruiting for high school students because, colleges are now looking to take like the senior or, an upperclassman and just bring them in for a year.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the high school kids now, unless you're a stud, you're not necessarily going to get recruited until the end, until everybody like clears the portal off. So, but Marcus was talking about, like, to your point, like, players have to now be educated to, like, hey, you're getting a check for $300,000. What are you going to do with it? Because, we joked around, like, back in our day, if someone gave us $300,000, that would be spent by the end of the summer.
For real.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, so I guess on that, like, what is your take on the recruiting process, and like, how do you think it's impacting high school players? Being that Dave's a high school
Yeah.
coach, you'd be interested to hear.
Yeah. Sure. Well, I think your first part of the question, I look at recruiting differently now. It's speed dating, no doubt. It's a week. It could be a day. It could be a weekend. So you know, coaches now have to really be on top of their game because a young man or a young lady, depending on what it is, can go in the portal on Tuesday and you may not find out until Wednesday. And by the time you make that call to whoever it may be, to that young man or to his agent or whoever, they might, oh, coach, I'm sorry. He's already got his 5 schools. He just went in yesterday. So, and the other piece of it too, there's only two components now. And I'm not saying relationships. It is now evaluation and negotiation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
No more relationships. You can you remember there were a time you recruit somebody for, oh, I recruited him since he was in 8th grade. Remember those days? Or those days are over now. The other piece is you're not gonna have the 4-year player at one school. That's a dying breed. That's over too. So again, just to be able to adapt to that aspect. And to the last point of your question, yeah, I think the coaches now, because of the landscape, they want to get older. They want to get players who've produced at other places. So do you take a young man that, is not maybe in the top 10 high school or top 20, whatever it may be. And now, you're taking the top 50 to 100 player that's really not ready. He's going to be ready in time, right? But I can get Ray Hutter, who's a true transfer from Texas A&M, averaged 9.6 points a game. He's proven at the high level. I'm going to try to get him because I need him to perform right now. Now, his asking price is 1.2 million because he averaged 6 rebounds and he averaged 6 rebounds day, right? And 3 of the rebounds he got off of missed free throws, and he wants 1.2 million. Are you kidding me? But that's the landscape. So either you have to, adapt or be flexible, or you know what? Ray Hutter goes somewhere else, and then you got to play against him, and then he has, instead of having 6 rebounds, he has 7.
Well, in our pickup games, we every Saturday we negotiate with Dave who's going to be, who picks on Dave on our team. You know what I mean? We're like, listen, we'll buy you breakfast afterwards. Here's my bottle of
Yes.
water.
Onto the high bit, all the relationships out the window. Like, yeah.
So Fred, we have one more segment. We call it underrated, overrated, underrated, but we'll get to that in a second. I guess I want to give you an opportunity to kind of, you decided to leave Kansas, kind of get out of coaching right now. Two questions I wanted to ask you. One is, Did you ever have an opportunity or desire to be a head coach? Because I'm assuming you must have had offers over your career. And then the second thing is, what made you decide like now's the time to like kind of switch gears and change careers?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've had a few, interviews, at a few places. The one obviously I wanted the most was Fordham. It just didn't work out for me, but, sometimes things don't go in that direction, but you still have to, put your best foot forward, and, you understand that nothing's personal, nothing's personal. It's just a part of our business, and I always jokingly, or people bring this and say, "Q, aren't you glad you didn't get the Fordham job?" I say, "What do you mean? Well, if you got the Fordham job, you wouldn't have won a national championship." So they kind of turned it a little bit like that. I said, "Well, you're right, you're right." But just meeting great people and just learning across the journey is something that I will continue to value, whether I was a head coach, assistant coach, or whatever title that you have, and as you get older, you realize the titles really don't
Right.
mean anything.
For sure. And so, as we close, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and what you're hoping to kick off with this.
Yeah. Yeah, well, after 30 plus years and 12 years, at Kansas, I think the opportunity presented myself. I knew at some point that my wife and I wanted to get back to Arizona. She's from here, and, we said maybe this is the best time to pivot, not retire. Dave, I still got some more working years before I can actually retire. But I thought this was a great time for me to create new space for myself, something I've been so passionate about. And again, it goes back to why I got into coaching in the first place. So we reside here in Arizona. Again, I talked about where my wife is from, and it worked too with her job. She now is a regional director for a company called Biogen pharmaceutical company, and she oversees the West region. So it did require relocation somewhere in the West. So the timing of it, well, this may be the right time to maybe get back to Arizona. So that's one. And then the second thing, I haven't truly launched it yet, but I want to get out and talk with high school coaches, players, teams, and even organizations, businesses, and companies that want to, as I say, want to fuel their culture, want to get a little bit better than they were yesterday. And I kind of term it as the separators mindset, something I live by every single day. So I kind of walk them through what that separators mindset is about, how to implement it in your school, in your organization, in your business, or even your company. It turned out pretty good for us, in 22. And I think it's something that we can all use, in our lives moving forward. So to be able to share that in our community and beyond is something I'm really excited about.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because you send me text messages on a regular basis, with all of the different drivers about fueling your culture, and and it's something that I'm starting to adapt in my role as a leader, to really make my team better in the position I'm dealing with now. So I think, and that's why I said there's like could be that synergy between what Fred's doing and what Kat and you're doing in Clinic Kids, and we may need to have another offline conversation where I connect you guys because I think it's really interesting what you're doing, what you and Cash are doing, because I think it's important, and especially for our kids today, they need that. They really need something. The high school players, the high school coaches, to really make sure that these kids don't get lost or don't get discouraged because maybe they're not getting recruited at the Kansases of the world, but maybe they go mid-major, low major, and then, after the first year, they work their way back up to, getting that, recruiting through the portal or something. But I really think what you guys are doing might be a conversation you want to take offline.
It's definitely a direct
Yeah,
correlation.
Yeah.
yeah, no doubt about it. And like I said, it just goes to, you know, when you're somewhat in that space of being considered one of the elite programs or the top schools year in and year out, to stay there, as I spoke about sustainability, it's got to be more than just your talent. And those are the things that are truly implemented in a place like Kansas, in a place like my life. And I'm just fortunate and I'm able to share it and be, as I call it, I'm not a motivational speaker because we've all played. You guys have coached. I said motivation fades, that wears out. So I kind of use the space of locker room meeting. I said, so when I meet with whoever it is, whether it be a team or a business or a bank, I said, we're in the locker room. It's the locker room. So there's no slides or no PowerPoints. Yeah, you don't do that in locker room. I'm not Bill doesn't have PowerPoints to talk about what we need to talk about. So I kind of use that type of mindset that this is a lot. We're in the locker room, and what we talk about in the locker room stays in the locker room. It's that type of feel. So I've already get their attention about this is the type of conversation this is going to be. So I do it online. I have high school. Matter of fact, Stepinac, I'm going to have them here in a few weeks. Mount Vernon. So a lot of schools back east, all over the country. So I have schools lined up, and then I'll talk to some companies here in Arizona just to kind of keep that momentum. And even some organizations, they're like, Coach, no, we're good. We just want to get a little bit better. Cool. That's what we talk about. We're good. All right, we just want to get a little bit better. Well, what is it? So I throw some stories in there along the way that people have no idea about. I'll talk about the huddle. People have no idea what was said in that huddle before we went out on that last defensive possession to win a national championship. It's it's crazy. It's crazy. I've seen leadership at the highest form in that huddle.
That's awesome.
I'm waiting for the book next.
Well, I'm an author. Probably know that. I have one book out. I wrote it during COVID. Co-authored it. It's called The Positivity Tribe in the Locker Room. Kind of talks you through a season. I kind of use some Kansas feel in there, what have you. But I'd co-authored with a guy by the name of Chris Worth. Back in 2020.
Right.
That's awesome. So yeah, we'll have to look that up. And by the way, Fred, like we tell everybody, once you're on this podcast, underrated, your career skyrockets. So who knows what the next 30 years is going to be like that. All right, so we're going to go into our final segments real quick. It's just 5 things: underrated, overrated. We give you one word, and you just tell us overrated, underrated. Some people like to explain their answers, but
You throw it. I'll tell you. I won't give it a whole coach's talk. We've done that already. I'll just say
locker room
overrated.
talk only here now. All right, so
That's right.
you start. You start. All right, I'm going to start off. AAU, overrated, underrated.
Overrated.
And AJ would be happy to hear that.
New York basketball.
Underrated.
Nice. NIL portal.
Overrated.
All right.
What can I say?
That's a good one.
College basketball. And let me rephrase, because you have like now it's the thing about people not really want to go to college. They want to go overseas. They want to go to NBDL. They want to do so many things, but to go to college. So yeah, this college basketball. Do you think that's the next thing to kind of propel you, or like again, a lot of guys are not even going to college now. They're going to these elite leagues and
Yeah, I would say underrated.
And then the last one here, and it's just because I want to see your answer. I think I know what it's going to be, but Iona Prep.
Overrated.
There you go.
Overrated.
Man, everybody will love that. I will love that.
one more, just to put you on the spot.
Oh, dear Lord.
Ray Hutter.
Defense is his defense overrated. Hey, 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 we should go back. Hey, and I remember everything. You talked about your sponsor and about all the knee sleeves and all the headgear, and you're like the accessory guy. No doubt about it. That's what I see Ray. Being an accessory guy, foul the crap out of you. What? I didn't foul you. Overrated.
Ray had
No.
weekends.
Hey, no. But no, Dave, I will. This is, and I'm being truly, and this is great. This is a compliment to you, and it really is a compliment to another step in that guy, Danny Ulrich. These two guys would harass, get underneath my skin, pick me up the whole way, challenge me every single day. And really, truly, it made me a better player. And I had to learn, I had to learn because the next level, I had that same type of pressure as a freshman now. Guys, but I realized, remembered how the guys like Ray and then and Danny Ulrich would just challenge me every single day. And so to this point where now I became the Ray Hutter, the Dan Ulrich, where I had to do it to some other guys that were older, like Greg Pedro, who transferred from Michigan State, came and I had to now guard him every single day like that. So no, Ray, in all honesty, man, you definitely helped me become a better player.
See that?
Hey, not a better shooter, but a better player.
This is what happens every Saturday. We talk so much smack, and then Dave gets the wins the majority of the time. But that one weekend out of 52, I don't let him forget.
I love it. That's all. All it takes is one.
That's all it takes. But Fred, thank you so much. Again, I want to thank our sponsors, Chile Sunglasses or Chile Shades, and then also our Tommy Copper new sponsor. So we're excited. And Fred, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Best of luck. Stay in touch. We'd love to have you come back in a few months.
Thank you.
I will. I will. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys, and also too, Dave. Good luck to you at Cardinal Spellman. Okay. Okay. Except when you play Stepinac. Yep.
All right, Fred.
See you
Thank
guys. Thank you. You bet. See ya. Bye bye.